Hello, my name is Joseph Carlson, and this is episode 167 of Gaming with Grief, and I'm calling this episode The Division Impressions. But I want to remind everybody, this podcast will hit my website, www.gamingwithgrief.com, Monday morning at 7 a.m. Please go there, support the show, leave a comment, let me know what you think of the show, rate the show, and give me any suggestions there. You can also subscribe to the podcast on either Apple iTunes or the Google Play Store. I'm also on Spotify, and the audio version of the podcast does hit YouTube day and date at 7 a.m., just like on the website. So if that's how you want to listen to it, that'd be great. However you support the show is great. You can also write to the podcast at gwgpodfellows@gmail.com. Write me there. Let me know what you think of the show. Give me, some kind of suggestion, things like that. If there's a game you're thinking about you want me to review, leave it there. That'd be great. And I'm also on Twitter at JustLittleJoe. And like I say every episode, but I'm terrible at, I will try to get better at promoting the show. So, you didn't walk into a time warp. I mean, I've checked several of my old episodes. I don't believe back in the day, unless I missed something, because as I've said before, I was really stupid, and I named a lot of the old podcasts, unique names, which is terrible when you're trying to go back and research old episodes. I guess several episodes ago, I tried to be more, just more matter of fact with the names, because I thought, it'll be clever if I come up with a funny name, but now you can't really find anything, and I do give descriptions of the episode, but even those are a little bit incomplete, and I don't know really what I've done before. So when The Division came out, which was 2016 for my records, it came out basically on PC, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One on the 8th of March 2016. It was developed by Massive Entertainment and published by Ubisoft. There was also, I think Raven Software was involved. I know Red Storm Entertainment was involved. A lot of people were involved in making the original game. And there's a lot of really weird real-world crossover with the game. So if you don't know what The Division is, it's like many Tom Clancy games that Ubisoft develops. There's a cover-based system. It is a third-person action game, so the camera is behind you. They literally draw a line on when you're playing to show bits of cover. If you hold down X or A, a meter will fill up on the cover and your character will run to that point, or you can hook around a corner. There's all these UI things, which is a really interesting way in the game how they describe it, but I'll get into that later. But you didn't walk into a time warp. I think with The Division, I've been thinking about it more and more because of COVID, obviously. And The Division, if you don't know, is based on a real thing, which I did some research, and I was kind of blown away. There's two things. So there's Directive 51, which apparently is something that the government has kind of come up with to plan for the eventuality of the continuation of government. The unclassified section of it is from FEMA.gov. So if you type in FEMA.gov Directive 51, you will get a plain text thing. Now, I don't believe this is marketing from Massive or Ubisoft, because this has a .gov thing, and I think if they were to create something like this, it would be under their website where you could read their version of this continuation of government. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the purpose of this is, I'm going to read directly from this. It's called the National Continuity Policy, and it says, 1, the directive establishes a comprehensive national policy on the continuation of federal government structures and operations, and a single national continuity coordinator responsible for coordinating the development and implementation of federal continuity policies. This policy establishes, quote, national essentials functions, end quote, prescribes continuity requirements for all executive departments and agencies, and provides guidance for state, local, territorial, and tribal governments and private sector organizations in order to ensure a comprehensive and integrated national continuity program that will enhance the credibility of our national security posture and enable a more rapid and effective response to and recover from a national emergency. Now, the reason why I'm reading this first is in The Division, there is something else that is a real thing that is written up by Johns Hopkins Medical Center. If you go to centerofhealthsecurity.org, which again I don't think is some weird marketing thing from Massive and Ubisoft, because I think this would get them in a lot of trouble, but there was an operation called Dark Winter. And what Dark Winter was the training tabletop exercise is based on a fictional scenario. The inputs experts used for modeling the potential impact were fictional. It is a teaching and training tool for public health and government officials. And right here, this is what it is. On June 22nd and 23rd, 2001, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, the Johns Hopkins Center for Civilian Biodefense Studies, and Anser Institute for Homeland Security and the Oklahoma City National Memorial Institution for the Prevention of Terrorism hosted a senior-level war game examining the national security, intergovernmental, and information challenges of a biological attack on the American homeland. So basically, that's what the Division is about. A scientist named Amherst with some other people basically created a strain of smallpox that was mutated, and he put it on the money around Black Friday holiday season. That's a setup for the game, and he did it in New York. And he put the money in circulation right as people were shopping, and he created the virus to have a 7-day incubation period. Now, I remember hearing about this in 2016, thinking that's amazing marketing, but it seems from what I can research online, and the internet is always right, this is a real thing. So these people sat around and said, what if? And I've heard this actually happened with 9/11. They got many, after the towers went down, I heard, not even anecdotally, there was articles written about it, how writers and artists were invited to the White House because the White House wanted to better encapsulate, like, what else could happen. We never thought terrorists would use a plane. What else do you think? And they came up with several scenarios, and I don't think any of those have been drawn up. Maybe there's been a wargaming situation, but I think it was reflecting a little bit more in the Division 1 because of COVID. I'm not going to be political at all or say anything politically about COVID, but what I'm saying is it is weird to look at the steps that they took place, and there's many articles that Ubisoft and Massive did where they went to these places. In the first game, it's New York. They take a one-to-one creation of a section of Manhattan, Times Square. I'm not that familiar with Manhattan, but there's a lot of there is many, I think it's Midtown Manhattan. There's a lot of maps online. What they did is they did a one-to-one creation of Manhattan, barring actual goods. I read that was one of the things they had to do. You know, a lot of companies don't want to be in like post-apocalyptic games. So what they did is they got their own kind of ad designers and like graphic designers to come up with their own ad campaigns, like their own coffee. They had basically their own version of 7-Eleven. There's movies that they came up with. They did their own graffiti in the city to basically show the city, as they wanted. So that way they didn't have to get permission from anybody to do, anything detrimental to their brand, apparently. The reason why I bring all this up is, in the beginning of the game, society has collapsed, and you were a division agent, the Strategic Homeland Division, the SHD, which basically you are a sleeper agent that is a U.S. citizen that has expert training, either by you either former military, you go to a facility, you get retrained in this cool new tech because it's Tom Clancy. Tom Clancy was this tech like mines that roll around and attach people and explode, or like turrets that are automated, or like healing technology, which is all fictional. But anyway, there's several waves of division agents that can be called up, and the thing that they're all attached to is they basically have a watch with an orange ring on it, and in the beginning, when that goes off, the agents have basically been activated. The game sets up that the first wave of division agents have disappeared into the dark zone, which is a section of Manhattan that was quarantined off because it was like the hardest hit with the virus, and it was also where they were trying to deal with sick people. And again, I started thinking about all this because of COVID. The game was free on PlayStation, so I just started playing it again. I have over 200 hours playing it on Xbox, but if it was free, I thought, well, I'll dabble for a little bit. And you know what? I think I'm going to finish the game again. The gameplay is really, really good, but I don't want to really talk about the gameplay because that's been talked to death. I want to talk about this in light of COVID, and again, I won't get political. But the steps that are being taken place in government are pretty, they're set in place, and there's this whole thing to actions that take place that put things in motion. And also the fact that this is really like an endgame scenario for the fact that this virus, the green dollar flu, the green pox, the smallpox, whatever, there's tons of different names for it in the game. this really decimates society. And it seems like the only way that if you're immune to it is if you have a genetic disposition. For whatever reason, some people survive. During the game, you go to different facilities and you try to research what's happening and why. You try to get materials either for... one thing I do like, and again, you're probably listening to some just called Game with Grief. I don't understand. The idea that society would shut down and we would have to call a sleeper cell of U.S. citizens to take back a city is like a really fascinating thing to consider. And again, I'm not going to get political with COVID, but, you know, it is a small example of something else terrible that could happen. And I wonder if because of COVID, that those kind of the original Dark Winter and maybe the Directive 51, maybe those are being reevaluated because luckily for some, COVID was not as terrible as some people thought, or maybe it was as terrible. I mean, if you lost a family member, that is tragic. But I think with the dollar flu in the game, it's more susceptible, it's more deadly, and how does that affect everything then? I think for me, replaying the game, it is a little bleak. There's a lot of things of like wash your hands, zones are quarantined off. You have to wear a respirator when you go into certain areas that have been contaminated. There is a server bank called Isaac that is run by human beings, you find out later, that is feeding you information from a satellite. And how they explain that is that every division agent has a contact or contacts in their eye that basically displays GPS locations, like where certain goods are. And also you have you have basically a satellite link that looks like a walkie-talkie that's strapped to the top of your backpack that gives you a satellite link, and you're able to talk to either other division agents. You have a woman in the chair, Fei Lao, she's giving you information, or other JTF, which is basically all military basically folded into one branch called the JTF after the attack on New York. And so that way everything can be coordinated. So you're working with the JTF. They don't really talk about rank. I think what I remember, because I have both art books, there's one just called, I have all this out for a second. So they have like the art of the division, which is really good. I have that. It's just basically art from the first game. There's a little bit of stuff that's descriptive about how they came to design the world. And they even write in there, it's very difficult to design a world where it's based on real things like knee pads and pants, because that's basically what this is. There's also Tom Clancy's The Division, The New York Collapse, which is basically like a strategy guide, or not a strategy guide, but like a survival guide, which is actually in the game. It was written by Alexander Irvine, which I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I really like it because, one, you find the pages digitally in the game, and you can read the actual book. There is like subway tokens, like in the book, like physically printed in the book, and you could see you're following. I did not write the ones down, but you're basically following someone as they're trying to survive in New York during the outbreak of this. I've also read Broken Dawn. That was also written by Alex Irvin. Really good, just a prose novel, just a normal novel. Really good about two agents. There's a new book coming out called Recruited. I'm definitely going to get that. It just came out this year. That's why I haven't heard of it. And there is a comic called, I don't know how to pronounce this. It's called Extremis Malice, which probably just Extreme Malice. There's 3 of those comics. There's Extreme Malice 1, 2, and 3. Basically, it follows a couple division agents, and they're going on a mission, which is really cool. There's also, there's 2 things that I need to get. I really liked all of the extra stuff around the division. What was written about it, the world of Tom Clancy Division came out when the Division 2 came out. I talked about that in another episode, but basically what the world does is break down the quarantine in New York, how the agents are trained, and the different factions in New York, and how everything's going to be put back together again. And that's what I read to kind of research this. They went more into DC. DC takes place in the summer. That's Division 2. I think that came out in 2018. The Division 1 came out in 2020. It came out in 2018. And then, I don't know. This is kind of a strange episode, but I guess I was just thinking about this more because, like I said, because of COVID. It is fascinating and strange to me that I don't think the developers, predicted the future. But I do think it is a window into possibly what could go on if COVID got much worse. In the lore for the game, they talked about how the president declares martial law because there's food shortages, there's rioting, and with the factions in the game that you're fighting, in the first one, it's basically like some no-name thugs, the rioters, Rikers, the cleaners, which are the worst faction in my opinion, because they use flamethrowers, which are very annoying and have an amazing range for every flamethrower I've ever seen. There's also the LMB, which is like a private military firm that broke from the government, and basically like everybody has their own territory and you're trying to break them up. And I think this is a fascinating thing for, there's these things called echoes in the city, which are just a fancy audio log. Your contact lens reconstructs everything, and you see how people live. Sometimes people are on grain lines and they attempt to get food from the JTF, but rioters come through and shoot people and they flee. And in other echoes, people try to eat a dog because they don't want to starve. And it's sad because the dog's alive and they're trying to get the dog to come to them. Basically, they're just still frames of like this orange glow, which is kind of the thing for the Division, and you just hear people talk. There's also this investigation you do where there's a pharmaceutical company called Zekix. Anyway, she works for a pharmaceutical company. I think her name's Jessica Walters. She figures out that there's a way that they can manufacture a cure for, it's like right when the virus hits, and they don't want to give it up to anybody. So she ends up getting hit by a car, strangely enough, because she was going to go to the police. So there's that. It is weird. There's just enough, sorry, my dog is being very annoying. 1 second. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. My dog was trying to dig for something, which is weird in a den. Anyway, this game to me is like a weird kind of confluence of fiction and obviously post-COVID, a little bit of fact. How do you keep people safe with allowing people to still have their freedoms? I think that is fascinating. I definitely recommend the game if you like third-person action games. But it is kind of a slog. I mean, looking back, I said I wasn't going to talk about the gameplay, but let's be honest. If you have 163 of a collectible, that's too much. Please don't do that. Some things are like 20 or 30, that's all good. But 163? Come on, Ubisoft. Oh, jeez. Wow, jeez. Obviously, this game is free. They want you to buy the DLC. I've already played that. I'm probably not going to dip into that. I mean, I don't know. It's something where I just been reflecting more and apparently doom scrolling, and so that's why I had to do this episode. This kind of thing would affect people on so many different levels, your health, safety, family, things like that. It's amazing to me that this game, again, I don't think it was predicting the future, but there is a Dark Winter thing that John Hopkins ran with those other agencies. There is a Directive 51. So it sounds like they use these things to be like, hey, what if this was a game? And it's kind of scary. So I don't know if this is a good, happy episode or not, but I think I will leave you guys this week. But I want to remind you guys that this podcast will hit my website, www.gamingwithgrief.com, Monday morning at 7 a.m. Please go there and let me know what you think of the show. Or you can go to gwgpodfellows@gmail.com, write me an email, let me know what you think of the show, or give me a suggestion of a game you want me to play. Or you can find the podcast on either Apple iTunes, the Google Play Store, Spotify, and the audio versions will go up on YouTube day and date with the podcast on the website. You can also find me on Twitter @JustLittleJoe. I think with that, I will talk to you guys again next week.